Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. We are super close to the new year, which means I'm now thinking about my January TBR. And in my goals for this year, I decided I really want to try and be less ambitious. I'll link that video somewhere so you can check it out if you want to see more of what I've got planned for 2025. But I really want to try and be less ambitious and focus more on reading and less on content, because I think that the content should come from the reading and not the other way around, and I've kind of leaned into that other way around format. It's content first, reading second. And I want to get back to just reading and being consistent with reading, and I think that being kind of less ambitious with my TBRs through the year is going to help me with that. So with that said, I'm really aimed for that with this January TBR. I've tried to make it nice and simple and not too long. It is kind of long page count wise, and you'll see why in a second, but like number of books wise, it's really not bad, and I think it is very doable. Alongside my attempt to be less ambitious, I also am kind of focusing on books that were recommended to me in January, just because I happen to have two books that were recently recommended to me that I think have very wintry January vibes, so I think they're going to be perfect for the season. So the first book I want to read, and this is the long one, is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. My best friend read this one years ago and recommended it to me in high school, and I kind of started it and then I set it down and I never got back to it, but she recently reread it and she said that she feels like she got so much more out of it this time around as an adult, coming back to it as an adult. And on top of that, she was pretty sure there were a lot of things in here I was going to love. She was like, there are so many things in here that you specifically like, and there's things that you specifically will be interested in. And the thing about my friend is she's never wrong with a book recommendation. She has never told me I'm going to like a book and then been wrong about that. So I am completely confident in her guess here that I'm going to love this. I think this could easily be a new favorite, and I'm really excited to finally give it a try. The other recommendation I'm hoping to pick up is one that my coworker gave me. I reached out to him at one point because I remembered he liked Stephen King, and I read It a couple of years ago, and I never kind of got around to trying any other Stephen King books because my experience with It was fairly middling. I think it's just too long. But I wanted to give his work another try because I know he is such a popular author and he has so many books out in the world now. So I asked my coworker, like, hey, I've read It, where should I go next? Because I know that you're a fan of his work, and he recommended Misery by Stephen King. I don't know why I just said by Stephen King as if I wasn't already talking about Stephen King, but it's fine, don't worry about it. He actually gave me several recommendations, but this one I was able to get a physical copy at my local Barnes & Noble. They were out of the other ones. But this one also, like, it's snowy and wintry on the cover. I think there's kind of a snowy setting, so I think it's going to be perfect for January for that reason. And I also wanted to pick this one because it's one that I know very little about. His other recommendations were The Green Mile, which I tried, but I think I need to get a physical copy. I tried the audiobook and it just wasn't quite working for me. And then The Shining, which they didn't have in my local Barnes & Noble. They were out of stock. So I wasn't able to pick up either of those. But this one, I know very little about it in comparison with, like, The Shining. I know a little bit more about that story, so I kind of want to go into this one somewhat blind. I know there's something to do with an author who's being held captive by, like, a crazy fan. I'm really intrigued by that premise, and I think that going in not knowing a lot about the premise is going to work in my favor. So yeah, I'm excited to give this one a try just because I've been wanting to read something else from Stephen King, see if I like maybe some of his shorter work, given that I started with It. And I think that, you know, getting a recommendation from somebody who is a big fan of Stephen King, has read a lot of his work, is maybe my best bet for finding something in his oeuvre that I enjoy. I hope I pronounced that word correctly. It's one of those that you see written a lot, but you don't really pronounce it out loud a lot. So hopefully I got that correct. The other thing I wanted to do with January, besides reading recommendations, is I want to start reading a nonfiction every month. This is another thing I talked about in that goals video, and I have kind of 3 that I think I could go back to. I'm only planning to read 1, but I have 3 that I've started, and I'd be interested in coming back to these and finishing them. So I just kind of want to mention all of them. I don't know which one I'll actually end up picking up, but the first one I have here is one I'm reading for work. This is On Writing Well by William Zinsser, and this one is actually also a recommendation. This was handed to me by somebody who used to work in the job that I work in now, and she raved about this book, said it basically changed her life, and she handed it to me and was like, the only caveat is you have to read it. So I'm working on doing that now. I am partway through. I think I'm on like chapter 4, and I'm finding it to be a really interesting experience so far. I feel like I'm getting some stuff out of it. I'm also finding that I disagree with some of his points, so I think that's interesting, and I am hopeful that I can read through this pretty soon. I really want to be able to get back to her and say, like, hey, I read it, because I've had this on my shelf since September. So I feel like I don't want to let this sit for too long before I read it and let her know that I have. And yeah, I think it's interesting so far. So I'm hopeful this is going to be a valuable experience for me, especially since I'm reading it kind of for work. After that, I have Uncanny by Junji Ito. This is one, I think, of the three that I'm the furthest through. I'm about halfway through this one. And this is kind of a retrospective on his work, where he is examining the influences throughout his childhood and young adulthood that led him to become a manga author and an artist. And he's also kind of examining some specific pieces of his own work to kind of think through, like, what was he trying to achieve? Why did he make some of the certain choices that he made in those? And I'm finding it really interesting so far. Some of the chapters are stronger than others, but overall it's been a pretty interesting time. I think every new fact I learn about Junji Ito is just delightful, so I would love to get back to this one, and I feel like this one has a pretty strong chance of ending up being my January nonfiction. But then the last one is another one that I'm also very interested in. This was a book I wanted to give away, actually, and I was really excited about it. But this is Henry V by Dan Jones. I am a little ways through this. I think I'm on chapter 3, right there. And this is a biography that's written in the present tense, so it makes everything feel like very immediate, which is making it really like readable. It's a really interesting writing choice, I think, and I'm intrigued to get back to this one. I think that Henry V is an interesting figure. He's this really important medieval king, and this is an era of history that I'm just like really interested in. I found when I was doing my master's degree that I really like, in particular, like kind of medieval literature, which is a really broad time span, but this was like a couple of decades after like the Canterbury Tales, I think, or maybe a decade. So it's kind of like that era. And then I also really like Renaissance literature. So there's a kind of some time periods that I'm really interested in because I'm familiar with and interested in the literature from those time periods. So I'm intrigued to learn more about the history as well. And yeah, I don't really know what to expect from this going forward just because I haven't really read a lot of biographies. So I think of the three, this is kind of the furthest out of my comfort zone in terms of the kinds of nonfiction that I typically reach for. So this is my little stack, and apologies for the lighting being weird over here. It's kind of dark in my office, but this is my little stack of TBR hopefuls for January. I would love to read all of these. I don't think that's going to happen, but I really want to aim for at least reading 3 of them. I want to try and read these 2 and 1 of these, and I think that that's going to be a doable goal for me in January. I do have some other plans kind of in the works, nothing real big. I am starting a new vlog series, which you'll be hopefully seeing either late January or early February. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. I don't know exactly when yet. I'm gonna let the books for that one be a secret, but I will say that for the first episode of this, I had Jacob pick some books for me, and I think he has picked an absolutely wonderful selection. I think it's gonna be really fun. Really looking forward to getting started on that as well, and I'm so excited for it. I really hope that this vlog series works out the way I want it to, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a great way for me to achieve some of my other goals for 2025. So that's kind of all I have for you today. That's what I'm aiming to read in January. Let me know down in the comments below what you're planning to read for January, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!